things. So I am Ed Pratt. Like I said, I am the co-founder and chief operating officer of Zenwork Incorporated. And Zenwork builds a number of different softwares, including Tax 1099, and that's the one that we're going to focus our time on today. So what are we going to be doing today? Let's go through a couple of housekeeping items. There is a questions section in the control panel, and I see a question there now about is the session starting at 12:30? And no, we're starting at 1 Central Time. So hopefully we're all good there with starting at 1 Central Time. I'm going to turn my webcam back off because it seems to be causing some drag on my system here. So I'm just going to turn that back off. So if you do have questions there, please put them into the into the questions and answers on the right side of the control panel here. If you have some technical issues, there is a support link that is here. I'm going to paste that into the chat as well once I get a second to be able to do that, or I may actually ask Karen to do that. Karen is joining me here from Tax 1099, and so I will have her maybe post that link there in case anybody has any support issues that come up. So a PDF of these slides is also available in the handouts section over on the right-hand side. So please check that out as you are able to. It is downloadable, and it's just of these slides. And I did want to remind people that there is not going to be CPE available for this particular session. We do offer some sessions that are CPE eligible, but this one in particular will not be. So let's talk about what our agenda will be for today. It looks like a lot, but it's really not that much. We will be able to cover everything in an hour for sure. So there are a couple of changes that I wanted to make everyone aware of for the miscellaneous and the K forms coming up this year. So we'll spend a few minutes talking about those. Then we're going to go in and we're going to spend most of our time looking at Tax 1099. So we're going to go into the website and spend our time, hopefully more valuably, rather than just listening to me yammer on about 1099 forms. We're going to listen to me yammer on about how to work in the site. So we'll look at navigating through the various menus in Tax 1099. We're going to do an import through Excel. And that import, the reason we do Excel in this class is because people use many different types of sources. And I've got some of those listed here: QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, Xero, Bill.com. There's a lot that we have, and we've added a couple for this year as well. But the process of doing it through Excel is very similar to what you'll do through the others, and I will go through and do a QBO section as well, so that you can see what it looks like doing it with live data coming over from one of those sources. We'll look at creating manual forms. That is something that you can do as well. So some of you may only have a handful of forms that you need to do, and so in that case, you may want to create them manually. And then we'll go to see where you can find the submitted forms after you have gone through the submission process, and that can be useful as well for making sure that that you have those forms available, whether you need to download them for your own records or you just need something to show for one of your recipients. So that's what we'll spend our time doing today. I'm going to bring up a quick poll. This is just kind of a question for our purposes, just kind of seeing what size of folks are here. If it will let me select the poll here, I will do this. Having just a brief instance of inability here. All right, so the poll should be coming out there, and the poll is just going to ask, how many forms do you think your firm, and firm, if you're an accounting firm, a bookkeeping firm, how many do you think you will be doing this year, whether it's your firm or your company? If you're an organization, nonprofit, you could be doing them for a couple of companies. I know some of our clients have one primary business unit, but then they file 1099 forms for multiple entities underneath that business unit. So I've got several options here: less than 10, 11 to 100, 101 to 1,000, and then 1,001 to 10,000, and 10,000 and up. And I've actually got somebody in the 10,000 and up category, so that's pretty cool. I've got 75% of people have answered here so far, and I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to pop that answer in there. Again, we're not collecting CPE or we're not offering CPE for this, so this poll is really, again, just for our edification more than anything else. But I just want to kind of see what the audience is like as we are getting started on our session today. There is a question in the chat about being able to get an audio recording. So there will be a recording of this posted. We'll post it online for everyone to be able to see. It'll be on Tax 1099, and we are going to go over doing a corrected version. Somebody said I'm hard to hear, so I apologize for that. That may be something on your side though, so please do check and see if you need to do something with your audio. All right, I am going to close our poll and we will see what our response looks like here. So we've got quite a different audience here. Let me share the results. There we go. So we've got 20% who are doing less than 10. So thanks, welcome for you guys, and creating those manual forms, maybe exactly how you want to do it. For those of you who are in the 11 to 100, that's the majority of our audience doing under 100 forms, but more than 10. And then we've got 22% doing under 1,000. We've got 2% who are under 10,000. And then I did have somebody answer that 10,000 earlier, but it looks like they might have dropped off or changed their answer because nobody's in that group now. Well, that's no problem. All right, so thanks everyone for participating in that poll real quickly. And let's go in and talk about a couple of things here. So I put a couple of slides in here that are more for reference, and these will be in the handout. These are just kind of good to knows if you are somebody who maybe hasn't used Tax 1099 before. It tells you who we are. It talks about some of the audits and security that we put into place to help with making sure your data is taken care of. But we're going to focus our attention, like I said, on the 1099 changes for 2022, and I'm focusing on these two in particular. There have been some other changes in some of the forms that are less often used, but our clients tend to use miscellaneous NEC and NEC forms for the most part, and then the K is something you might have heard about, and so I wanted to address that change in this session today as well. For the miscellaneous form, it is a very minor change. Those of you who have been filing forms for a few years probably remember when they shifted the box 7 out of the 1099 miscellaneous form and they put it into the 1099 NEC or non-employee compensation form. That was a big change. It was a real pain for everybody there for a couple of years. We've all kind of gotten used to that now, but because of that shift, they had some boxes that were available that weren't previously available. And so really all they've done here is they've taken the FATCA checkbox, and if you're asking yourself, what's the FATCA checkbox? You probably don't have to worry about it. It's a foreign tax reporting option that but some banks who are dealing with foreign financial institutions and some other limited circumstances need to check. So most of our clients don't actually worry about that box at all. So if you, again, don't know what it is, you probably don't have to worry about it. But everything after that box moved down because they shifted that into the box. And so here's what that looked like. I just put pictures of last year's form on the left, the 2021. You can see the FATCA filing requirement there, and then on the right you've got the 2022, and so you can see the FATCA filing requirement there. And so sorry about that. I did not mean to go to the next page there, but you can see what that looks like. So here is your FATCA filing requirement from last year, and here it is in an actual numbered box for 2022. And because of that, your excess golden parachute payments went from box 13 to box 14, and everything else just kind of shifted down one more after that. So keep that in mind as you're going through and working with your miscellaneous forms. If those what are now box 14s or 15s apply to you, keep in mind that they have shifted down, and then the state boxes all shifted down by one as well. The 1099K, you may have heard something about the threshold changing. So previously, the 1099K threshold, a lot of people didn't actually get them. It was part of what is called the tax gap, where there is income that people are receiving, but maybe they weren't reporting that income, and companies weren't on the hook for reporting it as well. So previously, if I was, say, selling things on eBay, I set up an account on eBay and I'm just selling some things there. If I did over 200 or more transactions and I earned $20,000 or more through my eBay sales, then eBay would be on the hook to send me a 1099K form. Now they've removed the transactions piece and taken the limit down, or the threshold down, to $600, which is a common threshold. We see that in box 1 for the NEC form, in box 1 for the miscellaneous form, and various other boxes on the miscellaneous form. This will be a big deal for some people, not necessarily for us, for most of us, because we're not eBay, right? We're not the people who are settling those payments. They're called third-party settlement entities or card issuers. What it's really all about is income, right? So no matter where the income comes from, it's got to be reported for me as a person who's selling on eBay. So even last year, if I did 100 transactions and I made $10,000, I wouldn't necessarily have gotten a form from eBay, but I'm supposed to report that to the IRS. But some users and sellers maybe weren't doing that. They might not have done it. They said, well, if eBay didn't report it, then I didn't actually get it. And so they might not have been reporting that. So when they do get that this year, when me as a seller, I get that form this year, and it says, hey, you made $10,000 on eBay, I'm gonna have to file that with my taxes, of course, and that may trigger some audits coming out for personal taxes where I wasn't necessarily reporting my personal income before like I should have been. The IRS also received some more funding for enforcement this year, so it's something to keep in mind, especially if you are an accountant or a bookkeeper who is working with maybe small business clients and such. You might have these types of enforcement rules that are coming along the line because these folks have gotten those 1099Ks now where they weren't getting those 1099Ks before. So again, just a couple things to keep in mind about the miscellaneous form and the 1099K form. Wanted you to be aware of those as we're getting started with getting ready for the tax filing season for 2022. All right, so with that, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna show you around Tax 1099. We're going to cover a few different things in Tax 1099 to make sure that we've got everything that we're all ready for what's about to hit us in January. It can definitely be a stressful time in January, and we wanted to put this webinar together so everybody would be able to just kind of get used to it. We know by doing this for years and years in the past that it can be a bit of a challenge. You only do this once a year. And so I saw, again, a lot of you are using Tax 1099 for a smaller number of forms, under 10, under 100 forms. So you may only see this once a year. And so it's good to get this refresher in. All right, so over on the left, this is our kind of standard left navigation. You'll see this in other websites that you might use as well. So I can go to my forms menu, I can create a new form. I'm gonna do that later today. I can go in, I can view my forms that are already out there. I can manage forms, we're gonna see that later today as well. You'll see some options here for me that you may not have, and that's because I'm on what's called an enterprise account. If you're working with a smaller number of forms, you'll just be on our essential account. You don't have to purchase the subscription to be on our enterprise account. So you may see some additional things in my setting that you won't see in yours. People is where I manage my payers and recipients. Then I've got all my imports. We're going to spend some time in here today looking at imports. I've got history, reports. Don't worry about the API unless you are building an application programming interface that connects to Tax 1099. It is available, but you don't have to worry about that. And then we've got our support section down here with our knowledge base and some videos and such. We also have our little chat box over here on the right-hand side where you can go in and you can chat with our customer support agents. So that's the left-hand navigation. In the middle of the page, we've got our dashboard. We've got all the various forms you might be filing as you go throughout the year with the different statuses that you may see. So I've got one that's submitted here. I've got some that are blocked. Most of mine are not submitted because this is a test website, and this one will wind up being blocked later, even though it's submitted now. I've just got it there so I can show you guys what it looks like after I've submitted a form. I can go through and I can really search for any of my companies. I can use my taxpayer identification number. If you're an accounting firm and using client IDs, I can use that to search. I can limit this by the different statuses that I might have. So if I just want to see what I've blocked, I can do that. If I just want to see what I've submitted but hasn't been accepted yet, I can do that as well. I can even do this for prior years. If I have information out there from a previous tax season, I can go in and I can see all of that different information out there. And I can search by the reference number as well. I can even start a new filing from here, and that's going to take me to do my manual form filing. So that's kind of just, again, kind of the basics of navigating through Tax 1099. We've got the different menus over here, and I'm going to spend some of my next portion of this webinar in the import menu. I'm going to talk specifically about the Excel spreadsheet import. So if I navigate over here, I can see in my Excel spreadsheet import section that I have the ability to import all of these different kinds of forms. I've got lots of different ways that I can work with the system. I can go in and I can pull information out of the system or put information into the system through a number of different ways. So as I go and I look at what this information is, if you have 1099-Cs or if you have 1099 interest forms, you can import those into Tax 1099. Real quickly, I'm just going to jump over to my new form section, and you'll see this is how I can enter manual forms in Tax 1099. We will come back here. There's a few more that I can enter manually than I can import, and that's because some of these forms are more of a one-off type of form. Like a 940 is an annual payroll filing form, so I don't really need to import those for the most part. So some of those forms that you'll see here under the manual creation are not available for import. But we're going to focus on what is available for import today, and I'm going to do the 1099 NEC form. So the NEC form this year hasn't had any changes to it. However, every year we put out a new Excel version for our templates. And so you can always download the Excel version of the template here. You can download CSV as well. I don't usually because I work in Excel. I'm more comfortable working in Excel than CSV, but if you like to work in CSV, you certainly can do that. I've already got a file prepared in my situation, so I'm going to select a file, and it's going to be one of my demonstration files here for 2022. It's going to be my 1099 NEC file. So just like any other tool where you're browsing to find a file, you go and find that file inside your computer, or if you've got a shared drive where you're navigating to, you can do that. Whatever you need to do, you can find that form, and you'll see it comes up to 100%. It'll tell me it's done. That means it's ready for me to proceed with. If I needed to, and I'm just going to touch on this real quickly, but if I needed to file a bulk set of corrected forms, I can do that here, or I can submit individual corrected forms, and I'm going to show you how to do the individual corrected forms later. But the process that I'm about to go through will be applicable for bulk corrected forms as well as bulk regular forms. Now, I'm not going to check that box because I don't want to file corrected forms. I'm just going to file these regularly, but I wanted to point that out. When I click the next button, it's going to ask me which year I want to import, and because I'm doing 2022, that's what I'll pick. It's going to come up to this page. If you're using our template, you really don't need to do anything on this page. All this is doing is it's reading the template or the spreadsheet that you're importing, and it's making sure that your headers, the top row of your spreadsheet, match up with what we're expecting. Because you're using our template, it's going to match up 100%. If for some reason you go in and you modify our template, maybe you change something in one of those header rows, you might have something that you need to pay attention to here. But for the most part, you don't need to pay attention to this, this sheet as long as you're using our template. So I've imported that data here into what's called the import grid. And so this import grid is going to be important. We're going to see this another time later today. And it is kind of the basis for any type of import that you might do. So I'm just kind of slowly scrolling down so you can see I've got 20 recipients on this page. That was 20 people that were on my spreadsheet. And this is the total dollar figure that I have that I am importing. So if you are doing this on a spreadsheet, you pulled that spreadsheet maybe out of some bookkeeping software that you have, some accounting software that you have, you can tie this number back and you can just match this number up with what your total was in your software. So it's always good to know I'm importing 20 individuals and I've got $20,190 in this case. And I can look back at what my software said and say, yep, that matches up, or no, it doesn't match up. And let's figure out what's going on here. Why is there a variance between what my numbers are? I don't want to have any variance in what my numbers are, that it's coming from my source over here to what I'm importing in Tax 1099. A couple of things about the data. I'm always looking for the green dots. The green dot means that's good. And by good, what it means is I have a 9-digit taxpayer identification number, whether that's an EIN or an SSN or an ITIN. I have a 5-digit zip code on my address. I have a state, I have a city, I have a street 1 address. I have all the basic qualifications that the IRS is looking for in my data so that I can proceed with this data. If I have errors though, I'll see a red dot next to a person's name, next to a recipient's name, and I can tell right up front here that I've got something wrong because I see a yellow dot next to Class Act. Class Act is just the name of my payer or my company that I'm importing here. So if you're a business owner, this would be the name of your company that you would see here. And if I see something yellow, that means I need to look further and investigate what's going on down a little bit lower. Now, I've only got 20 of these, so I can scroll down real quickly, and I can see that Joe Smith here is the person who's causing me a problem. I can see that red dot real clearly next to Joe's name. However, you might be doing more forms. Like some of you had up to 100, some of you had up to 1,000 or up to 10,000 forms. So if you're doing all of those in a single import, you can filter with this little red dot here. It says filter under here. You can't really see it because it's not wide enough, but it's got an F dot dot. Well, that means filter. And so I can use this little filter, use the red, and I can filter to only see the person or persons who are causing me some problems. And so I've got Joe Smith here, and he's causing the issue. I've got another tool over here to the right, this download error list. It's going to show me what is wrong with Joe's information. I'm going to suggest that if you ever have a yellow dot and a red dot here, that you download that spreadsheet with the error list. I'll open it up so you can see what it looks like. Here we go. All right, so I open it up so you can see what that looks like, and what that's going to do is let me see let me expand it out. Sorry, I can't actually see that. So I've got Joe here, and it says payee state is required. So Joe is the recipient or the payee, and then it says the recipient zip code is invalid, and then it gives me the tax identification number for my person that I'm working on here. The reason that I suggest that you download this whenever you have this issue is so that you can always go through and you can make sure that that you've got this retained for a later time. So if I fix this, and if I flip back to my screen real quick, I can show you. I'm not going to do it just yet. I'll do it in a second. But if I click on Joe's name, I can show you it highlights what's wrong with Joe's information. And so I can easily fix that state over here. But if I just fix the state, that doesn't fix it back wherever I started from. Now that could have been coming from QuickBooks. It could have been coming from Xero. It could have been coming from anywhere. It could just be in my spreadsheet record that I've got for those. So I've got to go back and fix it in that source record, and that's where the spreadsheet can come in handy. I can save this for later. If it's January the 31st, I don't really want to be bouncing back and forth between systems and trying to fix things in one place and then import it again. I just want to fix it as I go so that I'm ready to be able to do that fix here and go ahead and submit my forms. If it's January the 10th, I've got a lot more time to think about this. But if I'm pushing that deadline, I just want to go in here and I want to fix this, and then I want to know later that I can go back and fix it in my other data. So if you remember, I had two errors on that spreadsheet. One was he was missing the state, and the second one was that the zip code was not valid. Well, the zip code was only not valid because he was missing the state. If I picked the wrong state, like Colorado, then it's going to tell me my zip code is not valid. And this is just a simple matching that we do through the post office to make sure that the zip code matches to the state. So now I'm going to fix my state here. I'm going to click update, and you're going to see a couple things happen. One is that I no longer have anything listed here. It says 1 through 20 of 20, but I've got my filter turned on, if you remember. So I need to clear my filter. And then the second thing that's going to happen is I'm going to be able to see I've got all green dots. Now my yellow dot that was next to Class Act is a green dot, and I've got everything set and satisfied for what I am working with here. So we spent kind of a lot of time doing this. The next time that I go through this with QuickBooks Online, I'm going to skim through this because I've explained pretty much everything you can do here. There are a couple of other fields here. You can see the edit and the delete option. If I just wanted to get rid of Ann, maybe she had contacted me and she's giving me a new W-9, and I can see that she's a C corporation and doesn't need one anymore. I can delete hers. If I needed to change the dollar amount or the box, I can do that with the edit. You don't usually do those on the fly here, but it is available for you to do in case that's something you need to do. For my situation here, I'm going to select all, excuse me, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to move these forward by clicking the next button. So everything we've been doing so far is really in kind of a temporary state. I've been going through the process to import this data. It hasn't finalized any forms. I haven't sent any forms to anybody. I haven't done any of that stuff. I'm going to do all that on this page. So when you get to that import grid, you can think of it as being kind of a launching pad or just a temporary table so that you can come in and you can do some work, you can validate the information is correct before you get to this page and do the actual submission. All right, so I had 20 records and I've imported 20 records. You can see that that number matches up here. I'm going to scroll down and you can see that I've got those same people with the same dollar figures, and down at the bottom I've got that tieback amount again going back to my original source data, so I can see that the information is still correct. Everything's matching up as I would expect it to do. So this is the checkout page. This is also called the View, Edit, Submit Forms page. So over here under my Forms menu, my View, Edit, Submit Forms page, that's what I'm doing here. I'm able to go in and look at these forms and do the filing on these forms. I'm going to spend some time on this page as well, and I'm going to explain what these different boxes do as you're going through the process, because we offer some things that you can choose to do or choose not to do depending on what your situation is. And we tend to offer maybe a lot of things, right? And then you as a customer, as a user of Tax 1099, choose the ones that you want to do. So kind of the basic is you want to e-file. We don't do any paper filing, we only do e-filing. And so that first checkbox to select all of these is going to be telling the system that I'm going to do the e-filing. Can't do anything else on this page if I don't do the e-filing. I mentioned I've got my names and my amounts. If I have an email address, that will appear here as well. And we'll see here on the second column, on this next column here, why that's important. I have a USPS mail option here. So I can choose to have Tax 1099 send the mailed copies out for me. If I want to do that, we will send those out within the next 24 to 48 business hours. We have a help article that tells you what the deadline is for getting the mailed forms out. This year, it is Sunday, the 29th of January for us to guarantee it can go out on the 31st. We can sometimes get them out even after that, but that is our guaranteed date for getting them out. And that US Postal Service mail option, if I just check that, it'll check all of these. Now, I may not want to send all of them. I might just want to send this one, and then this one down here, I just print out and hand to the person. You know, whatever your choice is, you have the, again, flexibility to do that inside of Tax 1099. I may also have approval from my recipients to send them an emailed copy, and so that's only applicable if I have an email address. You can see here, if I hover over this one, I get the red circle with a slash through it, meaning that I don't have the ability to send an email to that person because they don't have an email address. So it kind of makes sense that I can't send an email to that person. My next column over here for 10 match, 10 is just taxpayer identification number. And what that enables us to do is to go to the IRS and validate that the number that's been given to you and the name that has been given to you match what the IRS records say. So this is can be a valuable service because you can get what's called a B notice. As you'll see them called CP 2100As if you have less than 250, or CP 2100s if you have 250 or more. But you can get a notice in September, October, where the IRS comes back and says, hey, you filed a 1099 for Ann Gable LLC, and that EIN that you sent in is not matching. And it's oftentimes just the name that is the problem, not the number so much, but the name that is the problem. Well, you've got a W-9. You collected the W-9. I hope you collected the W-9 from your vendor, and you can see that what you had is that what you submitted is what was on the W-9. That just means that you need to go back to that vendor and you need to solicit a new W-9. And this 10 match can help you avoid getting a $260 penalty for filing with incorrect information. It costs $1 for each one of them, so it can wind up being a pretty good savings for you to avoid that hassle and that issue of getting the B notice and having to reply to the IRS and potentially getting a penalty notice based off of that. Then my next column here is state filing. So we automatically do state filing for a number of states, and those are the ones where you will not see an option to select it here. So Ann Gable, maybe she lives in California or another state that uses the combined federal state filing program. If that's the case, we're not going to check the box there because it automatically happens when we send it to the IRS. There's nothing else that we need to do or that you need to do. We just check it on the e-file that goes to the IRS, and it goes automatically to those combined federal state filing states. It could also be the case that Ann lives in Texas, And Texas doesn't have any state income tax. And so Texas doesn't care about what Ann makes on a 1099 form. They don't need to get it either. But there are certain states, and Pennsylvania is the one that this file has. As I scroll down, you can see a lot of Pennsylvania's checked off here. Massachusetts is another state, so I've got that one checked and selected here as well. But there are a variety of states throughout the country that require an actual separate e-file. They want to get notice from you that you have paid this vendor, not just going to the IRS, but going to the state level as well. And so we automatically select and file those as well. You can choose not to have us do that. If I didn't want Tax 1099 to submit these for state filing, I can choose it and then deselect, and I'll deselect all of the ones that were previously selected so that Tax 1099 will not file to the state. Don't know why you would want to do that unless you're doing it yourself, because the state eventually will come after you and say, hey, why didn't you submit this? That's why they're requesting and requiring this separate filing. They really want to know about that state filing. So we will charge a little bit more for doing that state filing service, but then you know you've been taken care of by selecting that option. Now, again, if you live in one of those states, Texas, Tennessee, Washington, one of the Dakotas, maybe both of the Dakotas, if you live in any of those states and only are paying people in those states that don't have state income tax, you don't really have to worry about this at all. So we kind of take care of that for you, whether by notifying you whether you do have an obligation or don't have an obligation based on the recipient's address. All right, one more column here to talk about, and that's the scheduled date. So you'll notice that my scheduled date here is January 10th, 2023. I'm gonna hover over that, and if you squint real hard, you might be able to see what that says. But in case you can't see what that says, I'm gonna tell you basically what it says. It says that no matter what the scheduled date is here, we're gonna go ahead and kick off the delivery to the recipient. If you chose to have us do the postal mailing, if you chose to have us do email, we're going to go ahead and kick that off and start that process so the recipient gets it as soon as possible. On the scheduled date, that's when we'll actually send the form to the IRS or to the state agency that it needs to be sent to. This is an important date, and you might be asking, why is it January 10th? It's January the 10th because that's the first day the IRS this year is going to open up to receive files from us and anybody else that's sending an electronic file. Right now they're closed down as they do their changeover from the 2021 tax year to the 2022 tax year. So even if I really, really desperately wanted to send an e-file to the IRS, I couldn't do it right now. I'd have to wait until January the 10th. But this is also an interesting date because you don't have to send it on January the 10th. You can actually change that scheduled date and you can push it back. These are NEC forms, non-employee compensation forms. So I can push it back to January the 31st. Click OK, and you'll see that that date changes. And so if you say, well, why would I want to wait? Why wouldn't I just want to send it as soon as I possibly could? The answer is that if I'm doing this on, say, January the 15th, I want to give these folks a couple of weeks to get these in the mail or to pick them up from their email. That way they can look at it and they can say, yes, this is right, or no, this is wrong. If they say, no, it's wrong, then I have an opportunity up to the scheduled date to edit that form. I can come back into Tax 1099, I can make a change. If this person had been paid $1,000 on the form, but they really only got $700, then I can make that change. I don't have to refile, I don't have to do a new correction, I don't have to do anything like that with the IRS. I haven't actually sent it to the IRS yet. And so we can do that editing here for you. Doesn't cost anything to edit the forms while they're in that scheduled status. If you do a corrected form, we charge you for another form. So it can be a cost savings for you as well. We will charge you if you ask us to send out the postal mail again, because we have to go through the whole process of creating the form, printing the form, stuffing the envelopes and doing the postage and all that stuff. So we will charge you again for the postal mail, but we won't charge you for e-filing that if it is on a scheduled date that's in the future. All right, so then you've got the buttons over here. I can delete, I can view, I can edit. The view really just gives you a PDF copy view, and it will say, do not file to the IRS. It opens up here in my little tool. There we go. It says do not mail to the IRS, but it shows you what's going to show up on that form. It shows you your company name information. It shows you your 10 and the recipient's 10. The recipient's 10 is automatically truncated, is what the IRS calls this, and they request that all of the forms that are going out to the recipients be truncated like that with only the last 4 digits shown. Shows you the recipient's name, and then it shows you any other information on the form, the dollar figure, the state. So Colorado participates in the combined federal state filing program. That's why we didn't see that checked off. And then what income is going to be reported to the state via the combined federal state filing program. So anything that is going to appear on the form will appear just like this. The mailed copy, if you choose the mailed copy to go out, it will look a little bit different than this, but it will have the same stuff. We work with the mail so that we can make sure that those forms are done correctly and are going to look right. There's not going to be any risk of any personal information being exposed, and so they look a little bit different than this, but the information content will be the same. If you want to print and send the forms yourself, you can't do it here, right? Because this is do not mail to the IRS. It's also do not mail to the recipient. But once you go through the submission process, you will get a clean copy of this, and you'd be able to print and mail this out to the recipient. And it's a number 10 standard envelope that you can pick up. I say number 10 standard. They're actually a little bit different from Staples to Office Depot and everywhere else, but the number 10 envelope is the one that fits pretty good when you fold this in 3 and send it out in the mail. All right, so like I said, this is a test site, so I'm not actually going to submit these forms, but I am going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit, because one of the things I told you would do is go to find the submitted form. So let's say I had gone through, I've paid for my forms, I've submitted it. I'm going to click on the button that says Manage Forms over here in my Forms menu. So when I click that, it's going to take me to my Manage Forms page, and it's going to let me pick through my list of clients. I only have the one that I have to worry about here. You might have more, and it's going to let me pick the tax year, and it's going to show me who I have filed a form for. It's going to show me what that form name is. This was a 1099 NEC corrected form. It's going to show me the status of that form. It's scheduled, and so you can see it's scheduled out for that January the 10th date that I've got there. It can show me if I send an email, did they open it or not? If I send a mail, it will show me the mail right here. If there were state filing, it'll show me that as well. So this is where you can go to kind of see what your forms are doing. You can also go here to print out a copy of the form for your recipient, if that's what you want to do. Just pick the 1099 NEC and the recipient copy. It's going to download that for me. It downloads it into a zip file because it's expecting it to be, probably more than one form, but it's going to download it for me there, and I can open that up and show you what that single form is going to look like. It's going to look very much like the form that we just saw, except it won't have that watermark across it that says do not mail to the IRS, because this is the final form that's been paid for. So it looks very much like what we had seen before for that form. Right, so we click back over here into the site. Oh, I clicked it twice. There we go. So other things that I can see here, or that I can do here, all these blue buttons are things that I can do for my form. So I can request a new mailed copy to go out to the recipient. If I find out that something's wrong, I can block the submission. I can change the schedule date. So if I forgot to do that when I went through my initial process, which I did here because it's still on the 10th, I can push that date back to January. Oh, sorry. If I do it right, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing here. If I do it right, I can pick the reference number. I can do the date that I want it to go out. Click OK, and then I can go through the messages and I can successfully change that schedule date. And now I've got until January the 30th, midnight Eastern time, January the 30th, to go in and make changes to that form. What does it look like if I want to make a change to this form? Under my select option over here, I can edit this form. And so let's say, I've got $6,200 on my form here, and the carpenter calls me up and says, "Hey, that's not right. You didn't pay me that much money. One of those checks came in January of 2023. It didn't come in December like you said it was going to." And so I can look back at my records and I can say, yep, you're right. You know what? I only paid you $5,200 for that form. In that case, I can save and continue. That means the updated information on January the 31st is what will get sent to the IRS with $5,200 instead of $6,200. And if I need to send a copy out to this person again, I can do that. Sometimes they just want you to email them a copy, and so you can do that here from the Manage Forms page. All right, so there's lots of things that you can do out here in the software. I'm going to cover a couple more of these things that we can do, and then I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that we've had come up in the talk track. I'm going to look for QuickBooks Online here, and I'm going to do a quick import through QuickBooks Online. I'm doing QuickBooks Online because it applies to a lot of people, but you can see our list of import partners over here. This was my Excel spreadsheet, but I've also got my Topaltis, I've got my Bill.coms, I've got my QuickBooks Desktop, I've got Xero, gone down through NetSuite as a new one for us this year. So I've got lots of ways I can get the data in. What's most important to remember is that most of the time, as I'm importing the data, it's going to look the same as I'm going to see on a couple of screens from here. So I'm going to do QuickBooks Online just as an example. I'm going to pick this time the miscellaneous form just so we can see something a little bit different. I am already connected to QuickBooks, but if you're using QuickBooks Online, you can easily connect by just entering your QuickBooks credentials. And then I'm going to click Proceed, and I'm going to import Company One's information. So miscellaneous is a little bit different. We've only seen the NEC form so far, and it really only has one box, the non-employee compensation box. It has a tax box and a check box for sales of over $5,000 direct sales. But the miscellaneous form has a number of different categories of information. So I'm just going to pick some of these. I'm going to do rents. I'm going to use the office expense. This is my chart of accounts from over in QuickBooks Online. And so it's asking me, I've got office expenses. Where do I want to put those in my 1099 miscellaneous form? I'm going to say I want to put it on rents. I'm going to say royalties is going to get my purchases. And then I'm going to say box 10, gross proceeds to attorney, is going to get my legal and professional fees. Those aren't right and true, so don't do what I'm doing. I'm just doing it as a demonstration. But you can see I've got them checked. When I click next, it's going to take me over to my import grid. And so we've seen this before, and this time we're going to see it a little bit better. What it's going to do here is say, hey, you've got green data everywhere. You're actually good to go, as in terms of having your zip codes, your 9-digit tax identification numbers, and all that. You don't have to worry about any of those things. You've actually got that all here. You can also see that I've got 3 rows here, but one of them is for the same person. That's because they're coming in on different boxes on the miscellaneous form. So box 2 and box 10. So it is accommodating for that if you have that set up in your software. And so we can bring those over in those different rows, and we can create just one form. So you'll see when I go to the next page, I get 2 forms created instead of 3 forms, because this can be represented, both of these amounts can be represented on one form. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we already talked this to death earlier. So I'm going to click Select All. I'm going to click Next. I got green, my bottom amount, $9,300. That's what I'm expecting to see. And here's my 2 out of 2 records uploaded successfully, because again, it combined those amounts down together. Now I've got them in here twice because I've done the process earlier, but that's okay. I can delete the extra ones that I might need to. Again, not going to spend time here talking about this because we already talked that part through. So you can do that same process for Bill.com or any of a number of our other vendors that you may be working with, or any of our number of our partners that you may be working with. So I'm going to show you quickly how to do a new form. This would be the process whether you're doing a one-off correction of a form, or if you're just filing a couple of forms and you don't want to go through an import process, you just want to do an actual addition or a manual creation of a form inside of Tax 1099. So if I've never used Tax 1099 and I just want to do 2 forms, I'm going to have to do a couple of things here. First, I'm going to go to Forms and New Forms, and that's where I am right now. I'm going to click Add Payer, and I'm going to enter all of the information for my business. So I have a business. I'm going to enter my EIN, my business name. If I have a doing business as name or disregarded entity, all of these things I will enter, or I can enter, like disregarded entity is not required, but just a phone number is required. That's something that the IRS really wants to get on each one of the forms. If I've used Tax 1099 in the past, my list of companies will be here. And like I said before, on my search pages, I can go through and I can do a search and pull up just the one that I want to look for. If I moved my company this year, I've already got it in Tax 1099, but let's say I moved across the border from Pennsylvania to New Jersey. Well, I can do that. I can just go in here and I can pick out my new address, put my new address in, click update, and then I've still got my records out here for my previous ones that I might have done as well. Same thing with the recipient. If I've never done this before, I'm going to need to add a recipient. and that has a similar box that I go in and fill out, whether it's an individual that I have paid or a business that I've paid. All of that is going to be part and parcel of the same type of process. But if I've used it before, then I'm going to have all of my folks here that I'll be able to go in and select from. If I'm doing a corrected version of this form, I get to this point, all I have to do is check the box up here that says corrected. And we pop up a little message that says, if you're voiding a form, in other words, you sent it by mistake and you wanted to put 0 on it, you just go in and you put $0 for where I had entered an amount before, and the system will send this over to the IRS as a correction, and it will void out that original form from the IRS. If you had a wrong name or taxpayer identification number, it takes a couple of steps to do that. You got to void out the old form and then create a new form, but it's a similar process. You're still doing a correction to get that old amount out of there. You can also do a correction by having sent the wrong amount before and needing to update the amount. So if I had sent, $15,000 before, I typed it wrong when I created it the first time, and I need to send $12,000 this time, and I just type in the correct amount here. And then after that, I save and continue, and it goes through the same process that we saw on our checkout screen. You can do more. So if I wanted to add new 1099 miscellaneous forms that are corrected here, I could do that. I could save and add a 1099 NEC if I wanted to. So whatever process I want to walk through, I can do that through this. I'm going to actually remove the corrected box here, and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to hit save and continue. And it is going to take me out to my checkout page. This is my view, edit, submit forms page. And so I did this process for this class act company. I can see the form that I just created for Ann Gable at $12,000. It's the miscellaneous form. The only difference here with the miscellaneous and the NEC, so again, everything applies, right? U.S. Postal Service mail, email, 10 match, state filing. The big difference is with my miscellaneous form, my scheduled date for those can go all the way out to March the 31st of 2023, because the IRS gives me that extra time on the miscellaneous forms and a number of other forms, INTs, and dividend forms, and other forms like that. It's the W-2 and the NEC forms that they want to get January 31st. These still need to go to your recipients before January the 31st. So if you want us to mail them, well, like I said, we'll go ahead and mail those out right after you do it, but we won't send it to the IRS until that scheduled date comes up. So that's pretty much my demonstration there. I'm going to go through and look at some of the questions that we've got here. And so if you have some more questions, please put those into the questions box, and I will try to get to them as we go. We've got about 10 minutes left in our session here. And so I'm going to go through some of the questions that we've got. Let's see. It's good to see you too. Yep. And so we went over how to submit the corrected 1099. Let's see, 1099 NEC last year. Okay, so if you filed the 1099 NEC last year, you still will file the 1099 NEC this year if you have the same payment process. I talked about the K and the miscellaneous just because we knew there were changes that were coming up with those specific forms. Someone's asked about the 1099 NEC 01. So I'm not sure if that means a box one. There hasn't really been changes to the NEC form this year. They've kind of stabilized it now. They went through a couple of iterations of it after 2018 when they reintroduced it, or 2020. I don't remember. I'm getting old, but they've done that. They've done those changes and updated those processes. But the NEC form has basically remained the same. So Betty, if I'm not answering your question, please throw it back out there. And someone's asking if a client pays a vendor with a mix of credit card and checking, and the checking is less than 600 and the total is more than 600, they're going to get a 1099K. Do you file a 1099 NEC for the checking or ACH payments? So the thresholds apply for each form. So if they did less than $600 payments via check, they don't need a 1099 NEC form. If they did under $600 through credit card, the credit card processor does not have to issue a 1099K form. If they did under for one and over for the other, then they only get one of them. They did over for both, and they get both of the forms. So it really depends on the situation for that particular client. For the Venmo or PayPal question, somebody asked if they're going to get a 1099K for that, even if it's legitimately personal. It shouldn't be. It should only be for purchases made, like someone doing a business. I think on Venmo and PayPal, maybe there's a box that says, "Is this for a business purchase?" And so, so Venmo or PayPal are responsible for sending those 1099Ks out. All right, so I think I've shown some things that changed in Tax 1099 since last year. Somebody asked what TPSE stands for. It's a very good question. It's third-party settlement entity. You were probably not one, so you don't have to worry about that. Somebody asked what blocked means in our statuses. If I click back on the dashboard, I can show you what the blocked is. It means I did this by mistake, and so before my scheduled date came, I said, oh, I need to stop that, and so I blocked it. I just kept it from going anywhere further to the IRS. On Sage Intacct, so we use the Sage Intacct import. It's just your 1099 report that comes out of Sage Intacct. So you can go through the AP reports that you have on Sage Intacct to make sure that all your payments are in there for the year. And then we just consume the Sage Intacct report. It's very much like the Excel import that we went through. You just upload the file directly that you get out of Sage Intacct, and we can import that into Tax 1099. For 2022 1099s, somebody asked, is it still required to e-file, or can you do paper? You can do paper if it's less than 250. If it's 250 or more, then you are required to do an e-file, and that's a 250 combined amount for various form types for that payer. It's not just 250 1099 NECs, for example. There's a question about different companies that you file for and having different profiles for each company. You only need one login inside of Tax 1099 to manage those multiple payers. And so here, if I go under my Manage Payers screen, I can see that I have all of my different payers listed here. So like if I'm an accounting firm or I'm just somebody who owns several businesses, I can have all of those businesses under one profile inside of Tax 1099. I don't need to create separate profiles for each one of those. Which vendors receive a non-employee compensation versus a miscellaneous is another question. I can't tell you that because that would be tax advice. What I can do is tell you to look at the instructions for certain information returns and the instructions for the NEC and the miscellaneous forms. Those are publications that the IRS puts out. Basically, non-employee compensation, the NEC form, is what you pay somebody that you didn't hire as an employee, but you're paying them to do contract work for you. So you could have hired a web designer, for example, and you paid them $5,000 to go through and do your web design. You didn't want to hire them as an employee because you only needed a website to be designed one time. You don't need a website designed every other week. And so you only hired them for that one job. They're going to get a 1099 NEC because they were a contractor instead of an employee, and you paid them out for that job that they did for you. On the miscellaneous form, there are specific types of income, like rent that is received by homeowners who have rented their house out. There is fishing boat proceeds, which is always a fun one. You know, if you're somebody who's up in Alaska and you're doing I forget what the show's called, Ice Boat Fisherman or something like that. But if you're doing that, then you're going to get a 1099 miscellaneous for those fishing boat proceeds based off of the split that you did. So you are really looking at the definitions of the incomes that might have been going from. The spreadsheet that I uploaded, so that is here in the Excel spreadsheet section. Each one of the form types has an Excel that you can download here. And so you just go into the form type that you want and you use the download option to download that Excel. Yep, the templates are available on the website. There's a question about if the IRS starts, if you start out with a green dot, once the IRS proceeds with your file, could it change your red dot? No. So those green dots are actually good on the import, and that means the IRS isn't going to reject that for any of the data that's on there. They might reject it for something else, but we would send you something separate about that. We have, and this is not just us, this is anybody who does e-filing. There are very, very, very few instances where you as a user can possibly do something wrong that winds up with a rejected IRS 1099 file. It is possible, but it doesn't happen very often, and we work with you to get that fixed. So we don't, you don't have to worry about rejections from the IRS for 1099 forms for the most part. The actual spreadsheet, what does it look like? I can show you the spreadsheet if I can. I've got my questions window up here, and so it's blocking my ability to do this. So give me a second. So I can pull down the 2022 template. It's really just got payer information on the front section of it, and then it has recipient information, and then it has amount information. And this one is for the miscellaneous form. When it comes up, it's still coming up, so you're not seeing it yet. Here we go. It'll show up on your side here in just a minute, but it has payer information here, and it tells you kind of what we're looking for these required fields. It's a payer type, it's going to be either business or individual. If it's a business, you're going to have an EIN. If it's an individual, you're going to have an SSN. What is that TIN, the payer name, and really so forth and so on. It just kind of goes across the list of these fields. The red ones we have to have, and then going across, we start to the recipients, and again, the recipient fields we have to have. We don't highlight any of the boxes because we don't know which one you're doing it for, but you do have to have a box filled with an amount in order for that file to upload properly and get into Tax 1099. All right, let me go back to my questions now that I actually got that out of the way and was able to see that. Can you leave the forms here until you're ready to send? Yeah, so you can leave the forms in Tax 1099. They'll just be, once you import them or create them, they'll be under View, Edit, Submit, and so you can go back. And some people do that because they don't know if they've actually got everything done. You know, you might want to say, well, I've got 50 of them right now, but I've got 3 that I might need to do later. I'm going to get the 50 in here, and I'm just going to leave them sitting here until later when I get those other 3 ready. And I can send them all at the same time. All right, some of these questions are starting to be ones that we've already answered. There's a question about an extra charge for the mailing. Yes, we charge for the mailing. All of our prices are out on our homepage. There's a pricing page here. If I go to tax1099.com and click on pricing, it'll tell you what all the different prices are. Just scroll down. You can use our calculator at the top, or you can just go through and look at the various prices for all of the different forms and form types that we file. The access to the video is going to be out here as well. It's going to be on our resources page. We've got an old one that's out here. We're going to replace that with the one that I'm doing today. For confirming the 1099s have been sent through the US mail, what we actually do for that is we track them as they go through the mail. We have intelligent mail barcoding on our mailed copies, and so you can actually see the progress of them going from zip code to zip code. It doesn't tell you that the person actually got it at their house, but it will tell you that they got it at the most local post office that is available to them. You don't have to export data from QuickBooks Online to import, just hook the applications together. We are an app and app center. You can absolutely share the website with anybody else that you need to. And for adding a form that you forgot, you just go in and create one manual one if you need to do that. If you file the forms after January 31st, that's okay. You know, it's okay from our standpoint, I should say. The IRS may come looking for you if you do them late. They have different penalty schedules for late forms, but just understand that that is something that you may do. If you paid, this is a tax question. Somebody asked if you pay the landscaper for the office building over $600 a year, you paid them through Venmo, are you still required to issue them a 1099 NEC, or they'd be issued a 1099K? They're probably going to get a K. I can't tell you not to give them an NEC. We were talking about this at QuickBooks Connect last week, and we feel like you probably should give them an NEC too, and then they just kind of work it out on their end for their personal taxes for the Schedule SE that they would be filling out. But that is really something that I can't tell you which way to do one way or the other. There's one last question I'm going to get. Can we send to the contractors without the watermark before submitting to the IRS? That's no. They do have the watermark on until you click the submit button. It doesn't go to the IRS though until that scheduled date. So make sure that you're keeping those two things distinct and separate. All right, it's 2 o'clock, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our session today. I'm sorry I didn't get to all the questions, but I got to as many as I could. I do appreciate your attendance. Hope you have a great filing season and look forward to hearing from you as we go through January.